History holds mysteries. Some fade, others burn brighter with time. This is the story of a word etched into the American soul. To understand how a colony disappears, we must first understand why it was there. The year, 1587. The age of empire. Queen Elizabeth I watched with envy as Spain grew rich from the New World. She needed an English foothold on that vast, unknown land. She turned to Sir Walter Raleigh, a poet, soldier, and court favorite dreaming of empire. In 1584, his first scouting mission returned with tales of a paradise in North Carolina. They brought back two native men, Manteo and Wanchese, who would become key to this story. Raleigh's first attempt in 1585, a military fort, failed disastrously. Conflict with local tribes and starvation forced them home in disgrace. But Raleigh was not deterred. He had a new vision, a true colony. He recruited families, smiths, masons, and farmers, men, women, and children, over 100 souls, betting their lives on a dream. To lead them, he chose an artist and governor, John White. White's watercolors of the New World had captivated London. In spring of 1587, 3 ships set sail for America. Among them was White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, who was pregnant. Her child would be the first English born in the New World. Their plan was to settle in Chesapeake Bay, avoiding the hostile ground of Roanoke. But a fateful decision by the ship's pilot, Simon Fernandez, changed everything. Citing the late season, he refused to sail further. He forced the colonists ashore. At the one place they wanted to avoid, they were stranded on Roanoke Island, at their abandoned, decaying fort. The atmosphere was tense. This was no paradise. Their fears were soon realized. A colonist, George Howe, was found dead, shot with 16 arrows. The local tribes had not forgotten the violence of the first expedition. John White tried to make peace, reaching out to his ally Manteo. But Wanchese, now suspicious of the English, had turned his tribe against them. Paranoia grew as supplies dwindled. The colonists felt trapped between a hostile land and an unforgiving sea. Their only hope was a lifeline to England. They needed someone to sail back and plead for immediate relief. They chose their governor, John White. He refused. He would not abandon his post, his family, his people. But the colonists insisted. Unanimously, he was their only hope. He finally agreed, a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. They agreed on a code before he left. Carve their destination, adding a cross if in danger. On August 18th, Eleanor gave birth to a girl, Virginia Dare. John White held his granddaughter for only a few precious days. He then boarded the ship, promising to return by spring. He watched Roanoke Island and his family shrink on the horizon. It was the last time he would ever see them. Upon his arrival in England, he found a nation in panic. Spain's massive fleet, the Spanish Armada, was preparing to invade. All seaworthy ships were seized for war. England was fighting for its very survival. No one cared about a tiny colony thousands of miles away. White's pleas for a ship were lost in the drums of war. One spring turned into a summer. A year turned into 2. White was trapped, helpless, imagining his family starving. Meanwhile, back on Roanoke, 117 people waited. They waited through a long, harsh winter. They waited as their supplies vanished and their tools broke. What choices did they make to survive? Did they hold on to their English ways, or did they adapt? Did their hope finally turn to despair? We can never know. Finally, in 1590, 3 long years later, White secured passage back. He was finally going home. As his ship neared the coast, he saw smoke rising from the island. He fired cannons and played English songs, hoping for a reply. There was only silence. The next morning, he led a small party ashore. He found the settlement, but not as he feared. There was no scene of destruction, no bodies, no skeletons. Instead, the colony had been methodically dismantled. Houses were gone, the area fortified with a strong palisade. It seemed the colonists had packed up and left in an orderly fashion. Then he saw it. Carved into a log of the palisade was a single word, in clear capital letters. CROATOAN. His heart must have soared. This was the code. CROATOAN was an island to the south, home of their ally, Manteo. And crucially, there was no Maltese cross, no signal of distress. They were alive. They had simply moved. His relief was tragically short-lived. A great storm, a hurricane, was bearing down on the coast. The ship's captain refused to risk his vessel searching for CROATOAN Island. The ship's anchors were cut, the mission aborted. White, his one chance within his grasp, was forced back to sea. He was carried away to England, defeated. He would never again have the funds to return. He died years later, never knowing the fate of his family or the colony. And so the mystery was born. Where did they go? The primary theory is assimilation with Manteo's friendly tribe on CROATOAN. Evidence includes later reports of natives with gray eyes who could read a book. Another theory is massacre, but this conflicts with the lack of bodies and orderly sight. Others suggest they split up, moving inland, or were lost at sea trying to return. The mystery of Roanoke is more than a historical cold case. It's a dream of a new world meeting its harsh reality. It's a ghost story woven into the fabric of America's founding. 117 souls on the edge of a continent who stepped into the wilderness and simply disappeared. Their voices were lost to time. All that remains is that single cryptic word, a clue, a destination, or a final haunting epitaph. CROATOAN. For centuries, the story ended there, a riddle on a desolate coast. But the search for the lost colony was far from over. It simply moved from the decks of ships to the pages of books, and eventually into the very soil of North Carolina. The modern search is a forensic investigation, 400 years cold. Archaeologists have become the new detectives, their primary suspect, the land itself. Their first witness, the word CROATOAN. For years, searchers focused on Hatteras Island, the historic home of the CROATOAN tribe. They searched for a grave site, a ruin, a sign of 117 English souls. The island was scoured, generation after generation. But the shifting sands of the Outer Banks are skilled at keeping secrets. Initial digs found tantalizing clues, but nothing definitive. A signet ring here, a German stoneware fragment there. Enough to suggest a presence, but not a community. The trail seemed to have gone as cold as the earth. But what if everyone was looking in the right place, in the wrong way? The new theory wasn't about a colony that vanished, but a people who integrated. Archaeologists began digging not in empty fields, but within ancient native villages, and there, they found it. At a site known today as Cape Creek on Hatteras Island, mixed among native pottery and arrowheads, were fragments of English life, a piece of a slate writing tablet, a shard of a ceramic jar, the handle of a small metal gun. These were not objects of trade. They were objects of daily use, found in native homes. It suggested that at least some colonists lived there, side by side with the CROATOAN. They weren't just visitors, they had become part of the community. But this was only one piece of a much larger puzzle, because another clue, hidden in plain sight for 400 years, was about to be revealed. The clue was locked away in an archive at the British Museum in London. It was on a map, drawn by the governor himself, John White's own hand. The map is titled La Virginia Pars, a detailed rendering of the coast. For centuries, it was studied for its geography, its artistry, but two small patches of paper pasted onto the map drew suspicion. What were they hiding? An artist's correction? A simple repair? Conservators decided to find out. Using modern imaging technology, infrared and transmitted light, they peered beneath the patches. What they found stunned the historical world. Beneath one patch, hidden over the mouth of the Chowan River, was a symbol drawn in red and blue, indicating a fort. A secret fort, dozens of miles inland from Roanoke Island. John White had hidden its location. Why? Perhaps it was the colony's intended destination, a plan B kept secret from the Spanish. This one discovery shifted the entire search. Suddenly, a new location emerged from the shadows of history, an area now known as Site X at Mary Hill, North Carolina. Excavations began immediately, driven by this new hope, and once again, the earth began to offer up its secrets. Not a fort, but something just as telling. A small English settlement. They found more pottery, not just any pottery. North Devon baluster jars, the same kind used by the Roanoke colonists. Borderware ceramics, typically found in English homes. The artifacts were from the correct time period. They were indisputably European, and they were found far from the coast, exactly where the hidden map pointed. Had the colony split up? Did a small group venture inland, seeking safety? The evidence suggests this wasn't a military site, but a place of living. A place where English settlers tried to build a new life in the deep woods. This discovery coincides with another crucial piece of science: dendrochronology. The study of tree rings. Scientists studying ancient cypress trees in the region made a startling discovery. The years between 1587 and 1589, the exact years the colony was left alone, were the years of the most extreme drought in over 800 years. Their crops would have failed. The rivers would have been low. The natives they relied upon for food would have been struggling themselves. This desperate context makes the move inland seem less like a plan and more like a necessity. A desperate search for food and water away from the salt-poisoned coast. So now, the picture becomes clearer and more complex. It is not one story, but likely several. Some colonists almost certainly went south to Croatoan and assimilated. Another group may have pushed west, toward the promise of the hidden fort. And what became of them? This is where the story grows dark again. Oral histories from the Lumbee tribe, who live in the region today, speak of ancestors who were found on the Roanoke River. They speak of people who could already read from a book. Could these be the descendants of that splinter group? Another piece of the puzzle lies in our very DNA. The Lost Colony DNA Project is attempting the impossible, tracing European genetic markers in families who claim descent from the Roanoke natives. It's a long shot, fraught with difficulties, but it's a hope that science can give a name to a ghost. So the colonists did not simply vanish into thin air. The evidence now paints a picture of survival, of hard choices, of adaptation. They faced drought, fear, and abandonment. They chose to shed their English identity to become something new. They became survivors. The real tragedy of Roanoke, perhaps, isn't that they died. It's that their story was lost, that John White's frantic search ended in failure, that the narrative of a mysterious vanishment overtook the complex reality of human survival. The colony is not lost. Its people were scattered by the winds of fate. Their bloodlines may yet flow in the veins of modern Americans. Their legacy is not a failure, but a testament to the will to live against all odds. The question is no longer just, where did they go? It is now, who did they become? And so the search continues, in the soil, on old maps, and in our own shared code. The word Croatoan is no longer just an epitaph for the dead. It is a signpost, pointing the way forward, a story of a new beginning, waiting, still, to be fully told.